staying with us on our continued coverage of the Ondo governorship election 2024. Let's remind you of some of the facts and figures dated important for this election. Over 5 million people in Ondo State, and of course 18 local government areas. And for this election, 3,933 other polling units that are captured, 3 senatorial districts, and of course, what we do know is that the registered number of registered voters is 2,053,061 voters that are registered. But out of those who are registered, those people who have collected their PVCs, and in essence, those are the ones that you should say are active voter for tomorrow. 1,757,025. The uncollected PVC stands at 295,856. It's a 85.6% percentage of collected PVCs to the registered voters. And we know that Ondo State has some interesting terrain. Hills, mountains, water bodies, riverine areas, oil-producing communities, and mining areas. Very huge potentials for mineral resources in the state, and that's why perhaps anyone who becomes the governor of the state is going to be critical on how to utilize those potentials. But let's get some more facts and figures as far as this election is concerned. I'm being joined by the Executive Director of Kimpact Development Initiative, KDI, Mr. Bukola Idowu, who is live with us here in our studio in Akure. Thanks so much indeed for joining us today.
Thank you so much. Good to be here.
I'd referenced your KDI report ahead of this election of tomorrow, and it does look like you have your fears as an organization. You identified hotspot and hotbeds and flashpoint areas, 5 local government areas you have identified that security agencies need to look out for. What informed those warnings that you have given?
So number one is the history of electoral violence in those places, because you cannot talk about the present without talking about the past. So we have to go back to up to 4 election cycles. You know, this is the 7th governorship election that the state will be having. So we have to go back to 4, at least 4, to look at the trend. And then you find out that cases of election violence are constant in those local government. That is number one. Number two, one of the things you also need to know when doing this kind of analysis is also look at the number of registered voters in those places. You also have to look at the PVC collected in those places. Most often, you don't find election violence happen in places where you have few registered voters, because there is nothing their political party are fighting for. And so you have to, number one, history of election violence, then you look at the registered voter PVC collected in that particular area, if it is something that to fight for. Again, you also have to look at the spread of the candidate. So where is it likely going to be? Where you call, where the people, the battlegrounds. Yeah. So for instance, you have some political party candidates coming from the south. So you have some coming from the north. So then if you don't have much coming from the center, then that looks like where everybody wants to go and just look for votes. So, and in that particular instance, that space is open for everybody. And then you have more of these instances in those political areas. So these are some of the indices we put together, and then you ask, then again, you also look at the movement of the people. So in some instances, you have to track over time to see what exactly is going on here. What exactly are the people looking at? So you also have to look at the attitude of the people in that particular place. So in fact, in some places, you find that people are already envisaging this is going to happen. Some want to relocate, some want to leave. And then you also look at the influx of the people in some of those particular places. So when you now begin to see few days to the election or few months to the election, you now begin to see strange faces just because of the election. in that particular places, then people now begin to say, oh, what exactly is going on? We are seeing strange faces here. So at that particular point, you ask, oh, look, this place, something might happen in this particular place. Then you have to really look more deeply into that particular space.
So you identified Akoko Southeast, Ile Uluji, Okeibo, Ilaje, and Ondo, Idanre local government areas of the Zeda, 18 local government, and you've identified five that are possible flashpoints. Though the DIG tried to play down on those, and I think it's psychological also. And when people know that there are possibility of violence, two things that it could bring: psychological issues in relation to voter awareness, voter turnout, and that's why perhaps the DIG was trying to play it down. But then, do you think that you have seen enough effort by security agencies in line with what you have identified in these odd bets?
Yes, I think in all fairness, we've seen that the security agencies are really putting this in place. Don't forget, we've even shared this with them. We've met with them, we've shared this with them several times, and they also have their deployment plan, which we just feel that this should just fit into the deployment plan. But for me, I think in all fairness, we have seen that, and I don't expect the DIG to also escalate the whole issue on the national TV. But what I think is that what we want to see is the strategic deployment in this area. Now, and when I say strategic deployment, you have to look at a situation where you are deploying before the election, which they have done, and again on the election day, and in terms of the double deployment. When I say the double deployment, now the people at the polling unit and the security agency roving around, and then most especially post-election. When you look at the history of Ondo State, the issue has always been post-election violence, even right from the days of Adekunle Ajashin and Omo Boriowo. It has always been post-election. The time of Agagu, it has always been post-election. Even the Mimiko, post-election violence.
So that's an area that they need to watch out
They
for.
really need to watch.
You identify two local government areas that are very critical, and these people are Ugbo and Ilaje people living in that area. Ilaje, Ondo local government, and these are riverine areas in Ondo State, which gives you some kind of concern. Could it be the water bodies around these communities that gives you this kind of concern too?
So one of the things you also need to know is that those people in those places primarily are not even the Yoruba people. They are also the Ijos. In fact, you find out that they speak Ijo and have a direct link from that waterways to Bayelsa, to Delta, to just like that. So now, and again, when you are looking at this, it is not like the Akoko area that have a boundary with Kogi that you mourn roadblock in that particular place, so that the interstate movement comes in. But we are talking about riverine area where speedboat, everything can just move in directly to other states in that particular place. So you can find influx of people coming from, most especially militants, cultists, and all of them easily come from the riverine area, from these neighboring states that are also the boundary to the waterways, to come right there in that particular place. And again, one of the things you need to know is that when you look at the history of electoral violence, you want to see that this, when in terms of constant factor, constant local government that have been appearing constantly, I think for the past 4 election cycles, that Ilaje and that riverine Ondo are very, very constant in that particular area. Riverine area, they have issue of logistic deployment, things coming late, and now you have candidates coming from that particular area. Then it's a place to watch. It's a place to watch.
I discovered that out of the 5 local government areas, there are about 2 local government areas that you identified in Ondo South. Ilaje, Ondo.
Yeah.
You identify a few in the central.
Yeah.
You're talking about Akoko Southeast. You identified a few in Ondo North.
Yeah.
You seem to have the share of the flashpoint seems to have gone around all the 3 senatorial districts.
Yes, but because, so in fact, some people are, of the opinion. I remember we are having a conversation, and some people have the opinion that no, the entire South, have to be the entire riverine area, the South have to be flashpoints. Yeah. No, because the dynamics, you cannot use the same narrative for the to say, look, everywhere have to be a flashpoint. But don't forget, you have the two candidates of, APC candidate and PDP candidate coming from there. There is also a narrative, and that is why you single out, you have to isolate and put it in proper perspective. There is also a narrative that look whether A or B. If it goes to A, if it goes to B, the governorship seat, they retain it in that particular South. So there is this tendency and the community consensus to say, look, let's be well behaved, let's get our act right here, because whether A or B, then this governor is still with us here. So, and that is why you cannot categorize the entire South and say it's going to be the whether they are from the riverine area or not. But you have to look at some places where you find out that one, history of election violence. Two, you also look at some other factors, in terms of how strong those political parties are in those particular local governments.
So you identify.
But when you go to the north now, you also have to look at it. As regard their closeness to Kogi. Mm-hmm. and those particular areas. And then again, one of the things you have to look at is that you have seen non-electoral violence happen in some places. For instance, the killing that happened in Owo and the alleged accusation that those people come from other states, from the north center, Kogi. So you find out that look, those places are just the borders. That border around that particular site. Then you also have to look at how close is that particular place we pick, most especially Owo, Ose, to Edo State, who have just concluded their election. Are they coming in? Are people moving in there? Are they perpetrating evil and then quickly move into the other states? So those are those dynamics.
I think the security agencies need to be watching out for these, and the voters also need to be on guard and ensure that they're not in harm's way in all of these. You've identified very likelihood of violence or of trouble in Owo, Idanre, and Ile Oluji, and also somewhat likely those areas that are more Okitipupa, Irele, Odigbo, Ondo West, Ilaje, Ondo, Ose, and the rest, and they're not likely, Interestingly, there are just about 3 of local government area in the whole entire 18 local government areas. But let's make sense of what you identify are the limitation of in this Ondo election. And you have identified that there seems to be some kind of growth and upward in the progression of the number of voters in Ondo State. What have you identified?
So what delimitation around the election is a very crucial aspect that people need to really understand and see how this affects the election. So what we are trying to say here is that we are trying to talk about a situation where the spread, and this is the first time that Ondo State will be having governorship election with new polling units that were created in 2023. So new polling units were added in 2023, and this will be the first time they will be having election with those new polling units. And however, if you look at it, one of the things we are saying is that, look, from 2016, or even from 2012, 2016 and 2020, you have that, look, the voter, registered voter were just probably increasing at a marginal rate. But the moment we get to 2024, now it has actually increased, spike a bit, which is like about 2,053,000. So from what we have in the past, however, what is the distribution of the polling unit. Now, because if you now have to go to the slide, you will see where we now begin to say, look, there are polling units in those places that have more than you have more than 1,000 in those polling units. You have one that are more than 500. So what we are trying to say is that the spread of the polling unit, we determine the early closure of the election. So, which means if we have, subject to high voter turnout, if we have high voter turnout, because one of the things we discover is that most of the new polling units that were created were more in the urban center, urban local government, than in those rural local governments. So what it means is that we need to begin to look at these areas as very, very crucial. So what it means is we are not fully, for instance, when you look at this data, if we have high voter turnout tomorrow, don't expect election to conclude early enough, for instance, in Akure South, that benefit more from the new polling unit and also have one of the highest registered voter. So this is what we are saying. So we have to now look at it that, hey, now, and what we are trying to say is that, look, deploy early into those places that we are talking about now. So these are the places that we are not expecting you to have late commencement of vote, because you have more people in those places. Yeah. You have more voter register, and you have more polling units in those areas. So you deploy more early to be able to conclude the election, and that is the implication.
Let me take you to the fact in comparative analysis, the number of registered voters from 2012, as indicated in and that's in the last 4 election cycle in Ondo State, identify that about 83 or 85% of PVC collection, and that's a good one. Yes. Just about 200,000 or so PVCs have yet to be collected. Over 2 million registered voters, 1.9 million or so have their PVC. So if you look at it from 2012, the number of registered voters since 2012, 1.6 million, 2012, 1.6 million, a few thousand higher than 2012 in 2016. In 2020, about 200,000 more, 1.8 million, and 2023, 1.9 million. But for this election, it's the number of voters that have been collected PVCs is 1.7 million, although 2 million people are registered. It's grown, but the actual voter, from my own point of view, is the 1.7 that we need to focus. We can bank on.
Yes, that is what it means. And Sheil, for me, and I think this is the conversation we need to begin to have now, because what it means is this: tomorrow is those 85% of the people we are expecting to come and vote. 85% of the people who have collected their PVC, those are the people we are expecting to come out and vote tomorrow. Mm-hmm. So we need to play down, we have 2,053,000 voters. INEC is not expecting the entire 2 million to come and vote. They said, look, the people who have collected PVC, 1.7, those are the people we are expecting to come and vote. However, this is also the issue here. And this is one of the things we need to begin to look at. And to look at it, by the time we are calculating our voter turnout, we are going back to calculate based on registered voter, not based on PVC collected. So we need to begin to interrogate these dynamics. However, it is good that we have 85% PVC collection, encouraging, but we want to see at least 50% of the 81.7 coming out to vote in this election tomorrow. Or else, we now begin to ask the same question over and over. Who collected the PVC? Where are they on election day?
We've had voter turnout has been very low, and I don't know, maybe we need some medicine to be able to fix it, or vaccine, voter inducement vaccine, so that voters can come out on election day to vote. because I don't know what else voters will need as an encouragement to, other than the awareness that is being used. But let me take you to the comparison per local government area. And for me, the political parties and the politicians have already, if they've not done their homework in this regard, it's too late. So you look at it and you discover that you need to be looking at the likes of Akure South, Ondo West. These are the big these are the big local government areas that that the politicians will be fighting for votes. And if you look at it from 2016 to 2020 and 2024, the progression is constant. And this local government, especially Akure South, if you win Akure South massively, you have done very, very well in terms of vote margin.
And again, that is one implication of this. So if you win that Akure South, because that is where you have higher number of PVC collected, you have the number of registered voters, but at the same time, it also means that whoever Akure South, the like of Akure South is supporting in this election, can also have their 50%. The coast is clear for the person. So, like you said, they will have done their analysis, and that is why when you now look at Akure South, you remember we painted Akure South as a place prone to violence, because they are likely going to come to this area and jostle for votes. And don't forget, this Akure South, and that's
Ondo West.
These are the areas that we can actually tag as the battleground in this election, because they are moving into these places to go and get votes. And at the same time, the other dynamic is this: these people, whoever they support, are likely, wherever they decide to swing their vote into, are likely going to win. And that is why it's too early to say, hey, this is not going to be a close contest.
The big 5 local government areas in terms of the registered voters and the PVC collected. The big 5 local government, Akure South. You talk about Ondo West.
Yes.
You talk about Owo. Talk about Odigbo, and talk about Ilaje. These are the big local government areas, and so they are spread across the different senatorial districts. If you are able to capture and win the votes in these areas, you are almost clearing the coast in terms of seeing a huge margin of vote. Imagine that Akure South alone has over 300,000 registered voters out of the over 2 million registered voters in the state, and it has over 200,000 PVC collected. So if you win massively in Akure South, you've done very well.
You have done very well, and that is good. Now, if you are also, and again, when you go to Ilaje is not likely going to go to anybody. It's going to be the vote is going to be shared there, because the two leading candidates, the two candidates are from those areas. So, it's like they are some contested.
Multiplicity of the presence of the heavyweights.
Heavyweights in that particular place. So they are likely, and that is why people will have to go and bank on those places. But at the same time, it's still going to be very, very interesting, because by the time you now begin to calculate the two-thirds, you now begin to calculate this 25% spread. And that is why I said, look, nobody can just say this election is going to be one way. It's still going to be keenly contested with what we are seeing.
And there's a whole lot of work in terms of the polling unit distribution. For example, you have Akure South with the number of polling units per LGA as of now 596. That is huge.
Yes,
596. And you see, between 1999 and 2022, until the delimitation happened, it's just about 302. Something has happened. A lot of massive increase in the population in the area, increase in registered voters that have shifted. And the concept is that if you have voters more than a particular figure, the delimitation has to happen because a polling unit is not allowed to have more than a certain number of voters. So it's going to be interesting how the big fives, look out for them tomorrow. The big five local government area, your Akure South, your Ondo West, your Odigbo, your Ilaje, your Owo. You can talk about Okitipupa, Akoko Southwest, and the rest. But those big five, you do well there, you will causes.
And then you also have to look at those places, beam the light on those places tomorrow, because as the politicians are justly for that particular place, then there are other issues that we have to be rearing their head there. So logistics have to be perfect here, you know, commencement have to be tight here.
Akure South is within the capital city.
It's within the capital.
Ondo West is just about an hour and a half.
But sure, you know that doesn't really matter. Because when you cast your mind back to Edo, late commencement happened right in Oredo local government.
In Orionwa.
So that doesn't really matter. And that, again, you also have to look at it when you look at the Akure South. So, you know, most times we joke about, the Akure South, that where the collation is taking place is the result that came late. This could be the reason, because you have more people there. Voting may extend late to the night, collation extend, because by the time, for instance, by the time Akoko Southeast will have finished their election, then Akure South, they are still voting. So that is the implication. So what we are now saying is that INEC should deploy early enough into that place. They should not even think that, let the farthest place go first. Give everything importance.
But you stated something in your analysis, and in your analysis you say there are hard to reach areas in Ondo State, and you've identified them. They hard to reach local government areas, including Ilaje, Ondo, Akoko Northwest, and Akoko Northeast. What gave you the impression of these communities? Why did you identify them to be the hard to reach areas in Ondo State?
So as a matter of fact, you know, INEC even have like about 5 local governments. We only identify 4. So, but the 4 I'm in agreement with what INEC did. So one, there are places in this, let's look at that, Akoko Northwest and Akoko Northeast. There are places in this place, in this local government, that you have to be on 2 hours on bike before you get to those communities. And that is the implication. In some places, you have to stop, trek to get to those particular places.
In Akoko
Northwest, in Akoko Northeast. Then you come down to Ilaje. These are riverine areas where you take ferry, where you take speedboat. But I am happy the militaries, they are involved. But at the same time, you see, the deployment can only be in terms of the rack center and everything. But even there are polling units in communities where you have that, you have to still go on water to get to those polling units in those communities. So these are hard to reach. And it also depends. And when you say hard to reach, it's not because, water and there's means of transportation alone. But you also have to look at the safety of what you are taking to those particular places. For instance, you know, how many bike men, so probably the police will take some bike, and then the man with the election material will be on another bike and move 2 hours to those particular places. So, but what we are trying to say is that these are hard to reach area. Number one, you have to see what you do in terms of deployment. How do we deploy? What are the strategies? Do we deploy earlier than the rest of the people? What is the security implication of moving ahead before the deployment? Before the official deployment. What is the security implication, or what are we going to do?
But because these areas like Zion Luabo, Ayetoro, Awoye, Orioke, and the rest, where you have to go by boat into these communities to be able to reach them. Well, we've gotten assurances in terms of security that they have enough transportation. INEC is also saying we have enough transportation on the water for all of these water side, and hopefully they're able to be able to capture these areas quickly. And one thing that you mentioned that is also very important for a lot of people who are watching is that it's not only arriving on site. Yes, it's good to be at the rack before, but also the fact, the major parts that we need to look out for is that what happens after the election. Immediately when voting closes.
That is
and exactly. This is where the major problem when it comes to result in this area. Over the years, result has always been awaited from those Ilaje, from Ondo. And long in the night, collation goes on and on in these areas.
Now, most of the time that we talk about hard to reach area, we talk about deployment. We don't talk about collation. And the essence of what we are talking about is not about your deployment. You are deployed to the rack. Now, but that is what we've deployed to those hard to reach area. We are not going to have the problem. They are helping us. But where you have problem is the deployment from those hard to reach area, from the rack center in those hard to reach area to the polling unit, number one. And if you make it there early enough, then the question is how you now revert to the collation center and to the state local government headquarters and to the state on time, because they were hard to reach. Because look, we have planned now, we have been there 2 days. You know, for instance, in some racks open in those places yesterday. Movement can be done even today. But don't forget, on election day, you are not going to wait 2 days to move back. You vote, the voting ends immediately. You are collected to move back immediately. And that is where the problem is. That is where the delay is. It's not even the deployment. It is coming because you take your time in deployment. You can move it to the rack and then you relax. You sleep over at the rack center, and then the following morning you can move as early as 5. However, to those places. However, when you finish voting on the election day, if you finish voting at 7 p.m., let's put it that way, then you have to tabulate or collate and come back that same day. So you don't have that laxity to say, okay, I'm waiting. And that is where the challenge is.
All right.
So it doesn't affect the deployment alone, because we can be looking at it as deployment. What about bringing back the result, the sensitive material? How do we protect that? So for instance, where you are going to be 2 hours on by, so in that late in that night, you have to come back, you know, because at the World Collation Center, they are waiting for you.
We're due for a break. Yeah, but there are 4 challenges or difficulties that I've identified that could happen tomorrow. And those 4 difficulties are not only identified based on just a flippant analysis, but it's based on what happened in the last election in 2020. We'll be talking about them, and also if any political party cry foul tomorrow, blame them. We'll tell you the reason why that will happen after this break, everyone. Join us again. Thank you so much, everyone, for staying with us here in our makeshift studio in Accra, the Ondo State capital, and our continued coverage of Ondo governorship election. Well, there's a whole lot that is going to happen tomorrow. For those of you who are going to wake up early in the morning, wake up to our coverage as early as 7 a.m. right in the center of the polling unit. You will see for yourself how things are panning out and whether or not there are improvements in our election. Let's get back to the analysis of this election of tomorrow, just a few hours away, and we are counting down already. Bukola Idowu, the executive director of KDI, Impact Development Initiative, has been talking with me right here. 4 difficulties faced in 2020, which could also happen tomorrow if care is not taken by INEC. And these are Beavers Manufacturing, late arrival of voting materials, delaying attending to voters, incompetent ad hoc officials. These are the four items that you, four things, difficulties that you identified.
Top 4 in 2020. So what we asked the people, the survey we did with over 2,000 sample size in Ondo, you voted in 2020. What were the top 4? So when we tabulate it, interestingly, beavers malfunctioning was one of them, late arrival of material was one of them, delay in attending to voters, and then incompetence of ad hoc staff. But again, so we can excuse the issue of beavers malfunctioning. And the reason we can excuse that was in 2020, Ondo and Edo was the first set of election that beavers will be used for the first time. So it's possible, the teething problem and everything. However, when you look at the recent elections from Kogi, Imo, Bayelsa, even in Edo, beavers have been functioning effectively. Even in 2023 general election, so you have beavers functioning. So what we are just looking at now is, look, these are the issues people face in last governorship election in the state. So how do we benchmark it? We want to see if we have if there have been progress in that. Now again, so I said let's excuse beavers malfunctioning because in 2020 they can have teething problem. That was the first time they will be using beavers. Now come to late arrival of voting material. This one happened in 2020, happened in 2023, happened in 2023 general elections, in some places. This also happened in Kogi, Imo, Bayelsa, and Edo in some local government, not generally. So, which means this one, late arrival of voting material, is a monster that has not, that we have not been able to tame in the electoral process in Nigeria. However, how we manage this tomorrow is another case entirely. But I keep saying this election is one of the elections that you have INEC well prepared for. As a matter of fact, when you look at the incompetence of ad hoc officials tomorrow, we don't expect that to happen tomorrow. Why? Because the corpers were trained for 13 weeks for this election. And that is why I said this is one of the elections that is well prepared for. 13 weeks for this election. So we don't expect. So
no failure.
It's not going to be tolerated. How can you train people for 13 weeks? Deploy them for the election?
And again, you just had an election in Edo State.
In Edo State. Some of them were there.
All of the issues should have been identified and resolved. One would think. But quickly, let me take you to one area. And that's what I said. Any political party that cry foul after this election should be caned. If you are not captured to have performed well in this particular analysis, shut up. Now, and this is the reason. There are 74,790 expected cumulative figure. Uploaded by political parties, 24,148. KDI is telling us that out of the 18 political parties nominated, 32.3% of the expected number of agents. 3 political parties have no agents at all levels of polling or collation. Now, the question is that they come around and say, something has gone wrong. Your representation on the ground to be able to identify for you where the trouble could be, you have not identified. You say you're a political party. No party agent at all in all of the polling or collation center. You do not have any right to talk, I think.
Absolutely. Spot on. See, political parties are meant to deploy party agents to the tune of 74,790 party agents. So which means 17 political party agents multiplied by 3,933 polling units. So that will give us that 74. That is what they are expected. However, what we have for this election, that they deploy was 24%, just 32%. I mean, 24,148, just 32%. Now, if you check the next slide, you will see the distribution of how those political parties fared. And you are spot on, and that is our concern. If you are contesting in an election, for instance, 3 political parties have no party agent at all. 3 political parties have no party agent at all. So
they are blind on sight.
APGA, no political party agent. Boot Party, no political party agent. NRM, no political party agent. And yet they have governorship candidates.
Right to talk, because how do you then say someone won the election when you don't have representation on the ground?
So look at it. You have APC supposed to even have 3,933 polling unit agents. However, they have 3,892. PDP have 3,931, short of 2. So these are the 2 political parties that have above 3,000. Now, you have 4 political parties above 2,000, which was Party Accord, have 2,365 polling unit agents. NNPP have 2,100, and then you have SDP and ZLP.
So now you will see, and invariably, you will see those who made efforts. You will see those who, because also one thing you need to understand is that
what it means is that 2 election cycles, registered voter 1.8, 1.6, that is 2016 and 2020. But by the time it comes to PVC collection, can you see the dip? Mm-hmm. It came down. Then accreditation on election day, it came down again. Then total vote cast, it came down. So what it means is that across every processes of that election, of our election, it keeps coming down. And what we want to bring out here is this. It's just simple management principle we are saying here. Is it time for us, to begin to think about shortening the process? This is 4 stages of the election, and it keeps coming down. Election doesn't have to be cumbersome. In fact, this is better. Again, I think in 2022, there was a layer added to it, register online. Mm-hmm. So if you register online, you go back to do your physical captioning. Then after that, you go to collect your PVC. That is 3 layers already. Then after that, on election day, you do accreditation. So we need to shorten that process.
I've been an advocate of saying we do not need anyone to create anything as voter card or permanent voter cards. I think it's nonsensical. I think naturally what the law says is that any Nigerian of adult age, meaning 18 years, is eligible to vote in Nigeria. That is an automatic constitutional status that the law has given you. And I imagine that if a Nigerian has an identity, one thing that is important there, based on the position of the Constitution, 2 things. The fact that you're a Nigerian, the second that you have come of age. What could easily give us that identification, or what could easily identify that for us? Your basic national ID. And when that happens and you are captured, naturally, as a citizen of Nigeria who has come of age, you should be able to walk into any police
with your ID.
With your ID. I mean, if you can now take it further to say you identify as a voter, you understand, so that you can be captured in the database, but you do not need, because PVC collection is a deterrent of some sort. And I think that for some reasons, those lawmakers and those who are advocating, it is a barrier to voter turnout, it's a barrier to participation, which I think we should jettison.
So you have taken this from the constitutional and the legal perspective. Mm-hmm. Let me even go to the technical perspective, so that we look at the 2 perspectives together. Yeah. Number 1, PVC, permanent voters card should have expired with smart card reader. That is how it should have been. Because as of today, the Beavers doesn't read PVC. Beavers doesn't read it. So when you look at the accreditation tomorrow, people only show it and they look at it. And then, so why do we need that PVC? What should we do? If your name is on the register and my biometric data are inside that the Beavers, all I need to come to is my name is number 40 on the register. And then, okay, what is your name? You see it, and then I put in my biometrics, and it's me. But now somebody doesn't have voter's card, his biometrics and everything is right there, and yet he cannot vote.
Because the thing is that for me, if CBN can use your BVN to identify all your banking transactions, if
so
your NIN can be used for, so why it is nonsensical for us to have a voter card?
So,
I think that what is fundamental, because those who do not have a PVC, those who cannot make themselves available to collect their PVC are automatically shortchanged.
Look at that data again. In 2020, 1.8 million registered. To come and collect their vote, we lost over 400,000 people who could not come and collect their PVC, rather.
There are over 200,000 PVC yet uncollected for this election.
However,
and guess what? Calculate how much it costs Nigeria
to produce
one PVC. And a lot of these PVC people, there are photographs and videos of how some of these PVCs were found in the gutters, in drainages.
It is time we do away with PVC.
I think it's commonsensical, and I think that we have come of age to identify that we need to use a data that is central to say, where do you reside? Are you eligible to vote? Yes. Are you a Nigerian? Yes. Those are fundamentals. And if you want to vote, just simply go and identify that I want to vote in this election by just going online.
Let's even say you capture all my biometrics. Yeah. I just need to walk to the place and confirm that I am the person. Yeah. You do my facials or you do this.
And
why am I looking?
All right. I think we need to wrap up this conversation quickly. You have projected and you predicted what could be a voter turnout for tomorrow. I want to know how you came back.
Just basically looking at what we use projections, and then we look at the predictive modeling, and we are saying, look, with what we are seeing, if the highest is 30%, and the lowest might be 27%. That is what we are looking at.
So that's what we're looking at. On a final note, what gives you the biggest worry about this election?
Result management.
And you gave an example, of course, of the EC40Gs uploaded on IREF in Edo State, and how it's being handled. And those examples that you gave is how well the officials are able to handle the results.
Yeah. So that what is giving me concern on this election tomorrow. It's not about the process. INEC is going to get the process right, everything is going to work well, but the result management. And I said three things. Number one, how the number of invalid votes will make a difference in this election. Then the margin of lead. If the margin of lead is touched, manipulated, or obstructed, or not well calculated, could mean a whole lot of difference. And then transparency around EC40G. Because in Edo, even if you still go on IRS, 22 polling units have EC40G, mentioning that election was cancelled in those places. But at the collation center, the state returning officer, we had any cancellation, they said no cancellation, no cancellation. What they have done was that what you have cancelled and you added it back has now widened the margin of lead. We shouldn't have been. So if there is any concern I have for this election is how well we manage collation. The result management is the key thing.
It's going to be very important, and I'm hoping that with some of the information and data that we've shared tonight, it gives an average voter the need to be able to be more inquisitive. The reason why you cannot sit at home, if you are in Ondo State today and going into tomorrow morning, you don't have any excuse to be watching movies at home or watching football. You've got to go out there and exercise your civic responsibility. You know, when you do, whether your candidate win or not, it gives you some sense of satisfaction that you have played your own role in building your nation. Leave the rest to others and keep them, put their feet to fire, being an active citizen. You cannot sit at home and complain in the corners of your home. All of us must be. In fact, if you are not participating in this election at all, wherever you may be watching, 7 a.m. tomorrow, China's television will be on the ground before the polling units open. We will let you see how the polling units are opening as early as 7 a.m. and we will monitor for you an election coverage like no other media organization can, because we are your election headquarters right here on China's television. Thank you so much, everyone, for watching. Bukola, thank you so much, and we'll see you on the field tomorrow. Thank you.